You did. Sorry, you this time. I needed a few breaths anyway. 53.
Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, September 12th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. What's your pleasure regarding the minutes?
Motion approved. Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I had to look down and see if Sid was here.
Welcome to the meeting. If you'd like to speak, please fill out one of these forms. And when it's your turn to speak, you'll be called to the front, and please speak directly to the Plan Commission. And if somebody else has spoken already about something you want to talk about, try not to repeat exactly what they say, but of course, let us know what your thoughts are and what you're about. So, thank you. Old business, item number 1, consideration and possible action on the request by the planning staff to amend Chapter 13-602, Table 6-1, and Chapter 13-1602 related to transient residential uses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the request to amend transient residential uses, or now what we call short-term rentals. There's a new draft provided to the Plan Commission members. Here's a clean draft and a marked-up draft for the current ordinance. We have discussed this quite a bit in the past. I can kind of briefly run through some of the highlights of the ordinance, and then we can discuss it further. Again, up on the screen, some of the biggest changes include the elimination of the conditional use permit. These would be permitted uses in the R1, R2, and RR districts. And there's a series of other standards that we're going to add related to the state of Wisconsin tourist rooming house. They would have to register with a business license through the state. Also registering with the Brown County or the City of Green Bay Treasurer regarding any outstanding fees for hotels. Register with the Brown County Health Department. The two more recent changes include change in terminology from transit residential uses to short-term rentals, which I think is a suggestion of the Plan Commission. And then finally, the permit, the STRP, which we took some liberties and made an acronym out of it. And we adjusted the fees based on, again, the recommendation of the Plan Commission members. At the direction of the Plan Commission, we did notice or sent a memo to the council members. We also copied the Plan Commission members on it regarding this draft. We really haven't heard much back. I heard from Alderman Scannell. His concern was he'd like to see adjoining property owners noticed of these requests when they go in or when they're made. But beyond that, we didn't receive any other written or verbal comment. So, again, the draft is attached within your agenda. I know we've discussed this quite a bit, so if there's any questions, we can deal with those now, but we are recommending approval of the draft ordinance as it is presented.
Thank you. Yes?
I have a letter in front of me from the Alderman.
Yes.
Didn't you see that?
I guess I put that, I just received that recently,
Because
yes.
you mentioned the fact you haven't received anything.
Just today we received it, yes.
Okay. Is there any reason that should not be honored, or are we just going to bull ahead and we'll just have this thrown back in our face from City Council?
So I responded. I also received this email earlier today. I responded to Alderman. We were in an email later this afternoon. In my response, I brought up this really, the genesis of this got generated at our July council meeting. And that was a TRP. This is for Shadow Lane down towards Shadow and Gross, that one that ultimately, you'll find out in the report, got rejected. But during the discussion, a lot of the alderpersons said, look, we need a policy, we need a policy, we need to get a comprehensive policy. There were several members who said that. And so I think that night, I sent an email to staff saying, we need to work on this like right now and need to bring this through. We do have a policy, it's just a policy that we found doesn't always work. So with that, I directed our staff to come up with a draft ordinance and bring it forth to Plan Commission so They did that so it was on the August Plan Commission agenda, so it could get to the August council meeting. Just basically what I sensed as a need or a direction from council to get something done as quick as possible. I think there was a request just to hold off on it, notify council what we were doing, give them a copy of the ordinance, and provide an opportunity for comment on it. We got the comments from Alder Scannell and Alder Weary, and to that, I don't know if any other alders, Alder Nutting is on the Plan Commission, but are there any other specific comments? I have not received any, and so that was what was here. So I think what we have before us, it is a good draft, and I think, in order to move on it, it needs to be forwarded to the council to give them something to chew on. And I think it's at their discretion, if they want to send it back, if they feel it's totally out of line, or if they want to, kind of go the traditional process, and instead of skipping to the third reading, maybe have a second read on it so you can talk about it a little bit more. I just feel from our staff perspective right now, and the initial draft that we brought before Plan Commission, I didn't feel that there was a lot of substantial amendments that needed to be done to it. So from staff's perspective, I feel it's ready to go to council. It's ultimately the Plan Commission's discretion how they want to act on it. But that is kind of a little bit of a long-winded response in terms of, I guess, from staff where we believe this is at in terms of its maturity.
Okay. It makes an ambiguous statement here that said, I believe the proposed changes are too far the other way. Did you get into what the heck he's referring to there, or is it just grabbed out of the air with that statement?
I'm not sure where it came from. My guess is that it's moving from an action that requires council approval to now it's an action that just requires administrative approval. That would be my read into it. Perhaps you could understand something on it, but I'm not going to speak.
I think the other thing is we're casting a large net here to kind of regulate all these types of uses throughout the community. Maybe he's suggesting that we limit it to a certain area, like Ashwaubenon possibly, or some other method of regulating these type of uses. Staff's perspective is that we cast that broad net and regulate all the uses within the city for short-term rentals.
I guess with that in mind, I would make a motion that we forward this information to the city council for their approval and with no further discussion, because it might just tear this thing completely up.
We do have a question here.
Yeah.
Well, it's not so much a question. I think possibly his reasoning for putting the moratorium is, didn't Ashwaubenon just pass a moratorium in their area recently, like within the last month?
They, not a moratorium, well, let me back up a little bit. What Ashwaubenon did, I know they carved out, they've been dealing with the same issue, and they carved out a neighborhood of where they want to kind of control these things or regulate these things. Speaking with our city attorney, and she's here, we cannot put a moratorium on CUPs because the process right now goes through a CUP. There's state legislation that talks about development moratoria and what types you can use, and CUPs are specifically exempted from that. So we cannot put a moratoria in place. The best remedy is to change the policy, amend the ordinance, and get something else there. If we don't like what we have, is to change it. I don't know, did I capture that?
You did. Just to
Okay.
expand on that, so CUPs were actually considered as part of the original legislation, all those developmental moratoriums, and in the final draft, they were excluded, meaning that they were considered and rejected as something that a moratorium could be used for.
It's pretty clear.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I would imagine that part of the concern here is that with this process, we no longer have any place for input from neighbors. And that's been a huge part of the decisions that we've made along the way. So it's really letting go of the neighborhood's ability to control the growth. And that is built into this approach. We just have to fess up. That is the case. And many of us have talked about how dicey that is, because you don't know who's going to show up at a one time, and there are all kinds of things with that kind of popular vote of neighbors against neighbors, or for neighbors, that are problematic. I do think, however, that there are a couple points that might add to control on this. One is I had suggested before that we require for short-term rentals, that there be a submission of the rental agreement to the planning staff, including reference to various city ordinances that need to be followed, perhaps also, well, we've got that problem with occupancy, but if there's a limit on parking. So that would be one thing. The other thing, and Alderman Scannell mentioned it, that neighbors might be notified when a permit has been given. Not allowing them input, but making sure that they know. Because this is a special kind of rental situation with a likely degree of high turnover. And not knowing why there are different people in that house next door or 2 doors over for a period of time, I think could be problematic. So I would suggest this be amended to include the specification, perhaps on between points in section 4, between 5 and 6, that the planning department shall notify neighbors and the neighborhood association within whatever our normal zoning footage is. Is it 200 or 400 now?
200.
Within 200 feet, when a short-term rental permit has been issued. Just simply so people know.
Well, is that typical though? For example, if I'm if I'm, again, I'm going to use Door County as an example. If I'm in Sister Bay and my neighbor decides to use their home as a short-term rental, I'm not going to most likely get a notice saying this place is being used as a short-term rental. And I wonder if we're putting the onus on the city to notify people, and then that following that, there can be problems, because we've often had problems with people coming in saying, well, I wasn't notified, well, I didn't know this, well, you should make it go out further, things like that. And I think just in terms of keeping this simple, that it makes sense not to do that.
I can understand that argument. You're inviting objections after the fact.
Yes.
Because you're putting that preconceived notion out there that there might be an issue with this, where really it should be more complaint-driven. If there is an issue, then obviously call the proper authorities at that point. But if you're sending out notice, then you're kind of making people think, oh, there's going to be a problem with whatever's going on next door. So, and I guess with the way we're rewording it, it wouldn't even be going through the planning department. It would be going directly through the state. The only thing that would be coming through us is the permit for the STRP.
It would be coming through the staff. So the
Right.
planning commission would no longer see these, it would come through staff administratively, much like a site plan does. So we would look for those points, make sure they're complied with, and then we could issue the permit after that.
And honestly, I think that the way that we're going about it now is very subjective, and I think we really open ourselves up for liability, because it's still a residential use, whether it's short-term or a 6-month rental or a year-to-year lease. I think I was at the last council meeting, and they kept on talking about how they had opened Pandora's box with the Packer party houses, but really with Airbnb and those kind of sites, that this is something that was happening whether there were Packer party houses or not. And I did a search on Airbnb, and there are a lot of Green Bay houses on there, and they're not anywhere near the stadium.
In fact, the other day, somebody parked in our driveway, and I looked in the car looking for who it could have been, and there's a young man walking up the street. So he came up to me and he said, "Is that your driveway?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, I thought it was the shared driveway. I'm renting this house over here, and it's 2 doors down from us." So there's a house 2 doors down from us that was completely remodeled and sold for more than $300,000. That is being used as a short-term rental. So, or at least part of the house is.
Yeah, I think it was a room to rent in that house.
Which is one reason I would still urge the inclusion of submission of a rental agreement that includes information about parking and about city ordinances, so that you know that's going on. When we first started talking about this, we talked about this as an opportunity to begin to educate people who are landlords. And I think that would be a part of that education process.
I like that.
Just a little information from the council, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this. We had a TRP request on Shadow Lane near Gross at our last meeting, and I think it was the consensus of this commission that they complied with all the requirements and were similar to other ones that were approved. So we recommended approval. Well, it did lead to a lengthy discussion at the council meeting, and the discussion was more along the lines of we've got to restrict these things more. And it was in response to a lot of people who signed petitions, and many of them were quite some distance from the property that was involved. Those that were within 500 feet of the property, I think there were something like 10 in favor and 8 against. But there were a lot of people from Liberty and Raleigh and Oneida, quite some distance, because the one neighbor who was against it, immediate neighbor who was against it, circulated the petition. So wouldn't surprise me if sending this to the council, we're going to have a long and drawn-out discussion. I guess when I look at this thing, there are very legitimate reasons for proposing what we're proposing. In fact, if you look at it, I think it provides more oversight than we're doing right now. The reality is that, you look at Airbnb or a couple of the other sites, and there are dozens, if not hundreds, of properties around the community that are listed for short-term rentals. And with this, we are requiring them to have this permit from the state, this tourist room in-house permit that really they should have had all along. Anyone under this agreement should have had all along, but we're requiring that. We're requiring the sales and use tax permit, so we know that they're going to be collecting that tax. They have to register with the treasurer for room tax collections and make payments and reports like they're supposed to. They have to get an annual inspection by the health department. And all those things are in the public interest. So, I'm not sure it's fair to characterize this as, going the other way, because we are coming up with regulations here that we feel are realistic and enforceable, probably more so than what we have right now. Again, I'm not sure how that's going to go over. I was hoping we would have more input from council members than we did, but I'm not sure what else we can do as a commission at this point, except to forward it and explain it and see what kind of response we get. If someone has a suggestion of how to change it, that's fine. But I think there's a lot of thought been put behind this. This was modeled after a community that has a significant amount of short-term rental, I think Sturgeon Bay's case, and there are other communities around the country that have similar ordinances. And I'm sure this may not be the end of the discussion on it, but we have the problem. I agree entirely with what was said, is that it hasn't been real consistent in how these have been approved or denied in the past, and this is an attempt to get something consistent.
I guess I worry if we send it as is, it's just going to come right back to us. I'm wondering, is there a list of criteria that the inspection goes through that we could provide council? Because having an inspection done on a house from the state is it's very thorough. And that's going to help, that protects the consumer as well, but it also is making sure that that house is very up to code. And I'm wondering if there's not a list of criteria that they're looking at when they're inspecting that we could provide council that maybe would show them exactly what is looked at.
I'm not aware of that, and we could check with the state. I'm not sure of their criteria. The city inspectors wouldn't necessarily be out on site unless there were permits pulled for certain work. But we could investigate further and find out what they're looking at, the criteria.
Are you talking about just something to present to city council so they know exactly what the state is looking at when they go through a property, so that they can see that it's, that they're
Very
looking at
thorough.
electrical and they're
Right.
looking at
Updated
safety and-
electrical, making sure that, there's no shipping paint, and, I mean, there's a number of things that they go through. The windows are, aren't painted shut.
Except with the our house.
The ordinance also, right? A lot of that's part of the ordinance.
I mean, technically, I think all houses, if,
It's kind of redundant, I mean, you already have that in the planning books.
Right.
And they should know that.
The city council doesn't know that.
No, you would think.
That's what the state inspection would be.
I had a quick point to throw out there. I just apologize if this was discussed in previous ones, since I wasn't here before. But in terms of enforcement and violations, that seems like a tall order, just based on what's here. And if I'm reading this right, it's a maximum of $500 fine, and then you wouldn't, or the permit would just be pulled. Especially for Packer weekends, those houses, especially any sizable one, is going for sometimes $500 a night. It doesn't seem like there's a lot there to even have people even go through the process. So it seems like there should be more teeth to it, or I don't want to say easier, because I know that's not the direction that it should be going. But, I mean, any of these houses that are sizable, I have a couple friends that live on the other side of 41 that are renting out their houses for Packer weekends, and they're getting $500 a night. It doesn't seem like it'd be a lot to deter people from just going on Airbnb and not going through the process.
And a lot of them are doing
Yeah,
that.
it's already happening.
I don't know. More of a point than a suggestion.
Right.
Yeah. Point well
So-
taken.
Yeah, so you're saying to increase the fine if they don't go through the property.
Well, I mean, how is it going to be enforced at this point? Are there going to be checks done? And that seems a little hard right now, because it seems like there's a lot of concern about these smaller Airbnb-style rentals. These Packer Park houses are pretty high profile, but these smaller ones in neighborhoods, the Airbnb-style, really, they're not going to stand out. I mean, unless you have somebody pulling your driveway, you may not even know it. So it's,
I think the violations are for those who already have the permit, and if they fail to meet a certain standard, they may be fined that way. For someone who's operating without the permit, then we could go through municipal process of citing them. So I think it's covered. I think it's more restrictive than it is currently. Right now, I pay a $300 conditional use permit fee. These standards here, I think, are, even annually, are more rigid, I would think, than what we currently have.
So basically, from our past conversations, it's based on complaints. If somebody is causing problems and the neighbors complain, then it gets looked at, and then the fine might kick in at that point.
So for example, if we got a complaint that there's an Airbnb or short-term rental somewhere, we'd send an inspector out, investigate, compel them to come in and get a permit. If they fail, it's orders, citations, and municipal court eventually. So, I mean, there is a process, but again, that's true of any other use that we have in many cases.
I really like this. I like it a lot. I just worry that it's just gonna come right back to us.
No
And I'm
matter
trying
what
to
we-
figure out what we can do to make it not come back to us.
No matter what we send, it's gonna come back.
Yeah.
So I think we should send this, let them give their input at the meeting.
I think just, if I may, I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to frame this as, and we've had this talk at staff extensively. The reason we went citywide, I mean, it makes it definitely much more, I think what we did here, it's more effective, efficient, equitable. Those three things, the efficiency part in terms of just, the admin review and the staff review, the effectiveness. If you're gonna be renting your house out like a hotel, then you're gonna be meeting some of these things like a hotel would need to do in terms of lodging. And the equitable, I mean, we need to apply this citywide. I mean, if you're renting your house out on a short-term basis, whether you're near the stadium or in Hester or on the outskirts of town, I mean, the same thing should apply, a short-term rental, a short-term rental. I think that's one of the things that we really stressed. This ordinance, I think the harder thing to maybe convey sometimes is this ordinance does not and it cannot stop the conversion of single-family houses into something different. I think it is what it is in terms of down, Lambeau Field is a major asset and it's changing the market for real estate in that neighborhood. And, just because somebody converts their house or buys a house or remodels it and turns it into something different doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be a short-term rental. I mean, there's many people who do that and live there. And the same aspect, just because somebody gets a short-term rental permit doesn't mean they're going to convert their house into anything different. The second big part of this is people who want to party are going to party. And I mean, with that though, I mean, we haven't had issues with our TRPs. And I think there's a false sense that, if we just somehow stop or don't regulate or regulate, over-regulate, allowing additional permits does not introduce additional problems into the neighborhood. And I think, when you look at, disturbing the peace, it's a public welfare issue, and it should be handled by the police as it happens. And that's whether that's in an owner-occupied home, they're disturbing the peace, or, those are the short-term rental. Just because you get a short-term rental permit, and in fact, I think it kind of proves the case. I mean, you look at Airbnb and how many of those places are listed, or you hear people, renting their houses out, but we don't have the complaints on this end. Because they're doing it in a manner that doesn't disturb the peace. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's, our ordinances are there, health, safety, welfare. And so I think, I just don't want, I think this regulation, for those who are renting, lodging in somebody else's home, we want to make sure that that's made up to certain standards so that we're providing a safe accommodation for somebody staying there. And the same aspect, with some basic parameters of maintaining character of neighborhoods. But beyond that, I mean, those are different health, welfare, public welfare issues. And so I just want to make sure that, the scope of this ordinance, we're not trying to oversell it, but for what we're concerned about, I think we feel at staff and Oakland Plan Commission, I mean, it focuses on the primary target is those who purchase properties with the intent of leasing them out on a pretty rapid basis.
Yes.
Did anybody talk to the Alderman McCleary, in reference to his letter?
I sent him an email this afternoon, but I have not had a dialogue with him.
Because there's another item in there too. He says place a moratorium in the Lambeau Field area while we look at changes. Right or wrong, do we have to address that? Because so far, I think we're back to square one. We started this discussion. We're just going to send this to City Council, and I agree with you that it'll come back. Because all of a sudden they'll wake up at City Council and look at what we got on there, and then they all become experts. The other problem is that I think the eliminating the general public's input is what we're basically doing with the Planning Commission and also the City Council. If we run this through, that's completely against everything we ever do with normal business at City Hall. So I wonder how far that's going to fly.
I think it has a lot to do with whether or not we have a legal foot to stand on.
Yeah.
To continue doing things the way that we work. And the other thing is that we did discuss the moratorium, and we can't do a moratorium.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's no question to even address that. Being at that point, then, I see no reason. This is some good stuff that they put together. I mean, they've covered all the bases and everything. I'm gonna make the motion, pass it on to the City Council.
I'll second.
And we can give them our input. I would think that this would come from our Planning Commission 100% in favor of it, but let's find out. Let's vote on it and pass it on to City Council.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just one comment, Kevin, you may want to be prepared to give a short presentation.
I've already been making notes.
Walk us through this, explain what it's all about.
I
because
think that's really important.
I can do it, but, you know, I think
Good idea.
you could do a good
It needs to be
job.
there up front, absolutely.
Just for clarification, there was a draft ordinance, obviously. Are there any changes to that draft as part of that motion? I just want to clarify that.
I do have some changes to suggest, but they are purely typographical.
Okay.
I think we want to use the term short-term rental the same way every time, drop the word uses, because that's from the old way where we were dealing with how people use their property rather than with how it was, whether it was properly zoned. So I'll pass that along to you, but I don't think that would disturb any vote here.
Because there's a brief discussion about noticing property owners and lease agreement, rental agreement, is that,
Right. That's a good question. So when we just said, let's put it forward, do you want to include that in it?
I would include that.
Okay. Is everybody's vote okay with that too?
you're
That
including?
one of the things that would be submitted in that list of submissions
So
would be the lease agreement the owner plans to use, including information about parking and noise and other city ordinances.
Yes, do we need to amend our vote?
I would.
Okay, so
Just to be clear.
you make a motion to amend the vote? Commissioner Brimmer? Do we have a second?
Second.
And I guess just for clarification, that's not, they don't have to submit their lease with every new tenant. This is just upfront, this is what their lease is going to be for. Okay, all right, because I was thinking it was every time. I'm like,
Absolutely.
I think
No,
that
no,
might be a
no,
We don't
little
want
far.
that.
This is the permit.
Okay, right, that's what I was
No,
thinking.
Nobody wants that.
Okay.
Okay,
So motion, second.
there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So that's the only amendment?
That's right.
Yes.
Just the one?
You're gonna roll.
Make sure.
Okay, thank you. New business, item number 2. Consideration with possible action on a request to authorize a conditional use permit for an educational use at 800 Packerland Drive, submitted by Cale Polchinski, NWTC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for a conditional use permit for an educational use, 800 Packerland Drive. This is, just kind of pointing out on the map, it's this large parcel highlighted in red here. This is West Mason coming out, Packerland Drive. NWTC is the property, campus just to the west here. Subject area, this is the comprehensive plan. There's kind of a meeting of the zonings here. There's business park or industrial uses kind of to the north along Packerland, which is the gray. The red is future commercial uses, and then there's institutional uses where the NWTC campus is. This is the current zoning. This is basically everything along Packerland is business park. And then there are commercial corridors along West Mason Street. So the request is a conditional use permit for an educational transportation center for automotive collision and new diesel program for NWTC. So this is just an appendage to their campus, basically. So this is a concept site plan that was provided, kind of still oriented the same way here. This is Packerland Drive on the east. This is the campus. And this is the location of the new classroom space here. And this is a rendering of the proposed building that will be built. NWTC does have a planned unit development for their campus to specify the uses. This is just obviously outside of that campus area, so instead of expanding their boundary at this point, we're suggesting a conditional use permit. If other properties become available and they acquire them, there may be a need for an expansion of the PUD zoning, possibly an amendment to the comprehensive plan, but at this point, this is kind of just a one lot expansion for that particular use. We did notify affected property owners. We didn't receive any objections to this request. We feel this is an appropriate use in the particular area, blends in with the industrial and commercial area, and we recommend approval subject to the standard site plan review and approval.
Yes, Commissioner Brimmer.
2 questions. First of all, since this would not be a commercial land use, as is recommended by the comprehensive plan, do we need also to make an amendment to the comprehensive plan?
We do not. Under current statute, we do not have to be consistent or compliant with the comprehensive
Okay.
plan for conditional use permits.
Because it doesn't interfere with,
Correct.
okay,
Right.
with that plan. The other thing is, I'm confused about lot lines.
Sure.
That's different from what you just had up there. If you put up the conceptual sketch, yeah. What you showed us before, I can even see the line here, is right here, that's the lot line. And this builds over the lot line.
Oops,
So,
sorry.
you know, which is which?
That's that little piece. I
Or,
think, there.
yeah, it's this piece.
Yeah.
This might go out like this. Let's see, that would match the other piece.
That is all part of the campus. There is a small piece that comes out.
Ah, so this is their campus already?
Yes.
They own
Right.
this?
And there's a piece
So they
that-
can build onto it?
And there's a piece that's
Right.
carved out from the
20.
dormitories that's
Okay,
just south of
beautiful.
that.
Oh.
Thank you. I understand.
Yeah, this is an older aerial, so just really reflecting
Okay.
what's in the field.
Great, thank you. Alderman.
On the map, what does the orange line represent? Future construction, or what is that?
I think that's the footprint of the proposed building. There's some other lines that may be future expansions. I guess I can ask NWTC, but this, I believe, is the current proposed footprint, maybe areas for expansion in the future.
Correct, potential future expansion.
Get that word.
So I'll be within the approval that we're seeking, basically.
Yes, yes. Yes, they could build the footprint and the expansion, sure, through site plan approval, yes.
All right.
I'd make a motion to approve the conditional use as recommended.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. You did fill out a slip, so would you like to speak before we go ahead and vote? Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And this will go to City Council when?
Next Tuesday. Next Tuesday.
So next Tuesday.
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 3, consideration with possible action on the request to rezone 1638 University Avenue from light industrial to general commercial submitted by Jesse Hall Keller on behalf of Ruben Rodriguez and 1652 University Avenue from light industrial to general commercial proposed by City of Green Bay Planning Department.
Okay, just to start with the two kind of pieces of the request. The initial request from the petitioner would not include this small parcel here, 1652, that is owned by American Foods, and a representative from them is here. Staff is proposing to include that, kind of square off, clean up the zoning line of the area. Right now, they've planted some trees here, and it's a green space. So we are suggesting inclusion of that parcel. The site is currently an existing, kind of has a couple of uses on it. It has a multifamily building, has a bakery, and then the large southern portion of this building houses a grocery store. The present light industrial zoning does not allow that as a permitted use. The petitioner is proposing to make some changes, improvements to that building. In order to do so, they must bring the zoning into compliant district. The change to C1 would allow all of those uses that are presently going on and allow the petitioner to make those improvements. A comprehensive plan does call for the area to be commercially zoned, so this would be in character with that. Right now, as you can see, we have commercial uses to the north, and then we have the industrial, light industrial along the street. Then further back where the larger American Foods property is some general industrial. The staff does recommend approval of this request. At the time of drafting this petition, had not received anything for or against, and had some brief discussions with American Foods regarding their inclusion in it. And they do have a representative here today.
Are there any questions?
So is it my understanding that American Foods is okay with
We are,
their
yes.
green space being
Yep.
changed to, okay.
Yes. It's something to discuss with them if in the future they would have a use that they want to propose on that very skinny lot. We could always change the zoning down the line if need be. But at this time, it makes the most sense to include it in this request.
Are there other questions?
Since it's in my district, I'll make a motion to approve. the
Second.
request.
We do have two people here who said they'd like to speak. Jesse, would you like to speak it up?
I'm good if you're.
All right, and David?
I'm good too.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, people.
We've got a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
It's the area too.
This will come to City Hall or a City Council on Tuesday. You might want to have one representative or somebody at that meeting. Especially if it lasts till 3 in the morning.
We'll try to get it right.
It's only 2:30.
Item number 4, consideration with possible action on the request to rezone 717 Nicolay Avenue from low-density residential district to office residential district submitted by Tower Clock.
Okay, so here we have the area of the property. Tower Clock Medical Building is the building on the north side of the site. Their parking lot is south of it, and this would be the next parcel going south. Both to the east and west, we already have existing parking lots. Comprehensive plan does call for single-family residential, but that is a general recommendation. The staff reviewing it feels that lining this up with existing parking lots are already there and adjacent to the commercial would not necessitate a need for a comp plan change. Zoning in the area, we have office residential to the north where the existing facility is, and then office residential to the east and west that are existing parking lots, and we do have single-family to the south. This is a site plan proposal. They're proposing to expand the existing parking lot. The existing parking lot stops here. They're proposing to add some additional pavement and then a row of permeable pavers for some existing parking. One of the challenges with the site was the amount of impervious surface. So we're looking to use some options to reduce that runoff issue.
That was my question. So the applicant is proposing to use pervious material, not impervious.
Pervious,
State
permeable pavers.
Permeable pavers to help.
And the applicant
stormwater.
can speak a little to the exact product we intend to use if you have questions, but yeah, they are looking to use some materials that,
Yeah, I wasn't understanding the way it was written.
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Staff does recommend approval of the request.
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay, with you, Bob?
You're doing a great job.
Motion
I
and
don't
a
even mess it
second
up.
to approve. Is there any other discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I do
Commissioner Berman.
have one concern. The current configuration of the parking lots, with that lower segment that would be incorporated into the new parking lot, that is the long rectangle, no, the whole
This section?
rectangle there, yeah.
Okay.
The part that I'm assuming they're purchasing is very nicely buffered with gorgeous trees around the end of it.
Yep, one of the
Really, I know from going back and forth for some eye surgeries there. And I'm wondering what might be done for the neighborhood.
At the time this was submitted, they were not finalized with a landscape plan, but they did discuss that the new southern border would be landscaped similar to what the existing was. And the applicant can maybe
Right.
speak to that a little better.
And the other thing with this layout, in the rear of that property, there were some mature trees back there that
Yes.
we're able to maintain and really.
Wonderful.
That L-shaped area in the back is remaining untouched. We were able to get the same parking efficiency with this layout as opposed to trying to smush something in the back there.
Terrific.
Thank you. So we still have a vote on the floor? Motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Item number 5, consideration with possible action on a request to rezone 908 and 910 Belt Avenue from general commercial to low-density residential, submitted by Cheryl Renier Wig, Redevelopment Authority of Green Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to rezone two small properties along Velp Avenue, actually Velp and Shea. You can see them located here. One you can probably barely see. This is 908 Velp right here, and 910. So 908 is about 1,000 square feet, 910 is about, was it just over 6,000 for a total of 7,000 square feet in size. So they're both rather small. They're remnant pieces from the Velp Avenue corridor expansion. Moving along, the city's comprehensive plan recommends high-intensity retail office or housing here. The one case here, the recommendation, or the request is to go to R1. This is inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan, just so you're aware of that. The current zoning is commercial. However, both parcels are so small that they're really not buildable under the current zoning, either commercial or if there was another zoning consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The adjoining zonings are low-density residential, and the case here is that there's also a request to declare these properties surplus. It can be attached and then create a buildable lot for a single-family home. So the recommendation tonight is approval of the request. It's not consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, however, it is logical because of the size of the lots to rezone them to low-density for a future home.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Brenner.
So that's based on the assessment that even combined, it would be too small for any commercial use.
About 7,000 square feet, right. So to put a building on there, parking, green space is just not really feasible. So we would suggest, there's a Velp Avenue corridor study going on right now. That may be part of that to reevaluate the future land uses in that possible corridor.
Do we have any problem with going ahead with the rezoning without first changing the comprehensive plan?
I don't think so. It's being studied right now. I don't know that, it doesn't prevent future development or redevelopment of that lot, so it's almost kind of like a holding pattern, so to speak.
I guess as far as exit points for that property, will they be on to Shea?
They will be.
Okay.
That'll be part of the next request.
Okay,
So,
I thought I read it somewhere, but then I
Yeah.
couldn't find it on this one, so,
Right.
okay. Will the address change to a Shea address?
You most likely will,
All of
yes,
them, okay.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, that really fits, I mean, that name, I live over there, and it's all houses over there, and that's such a small little lot, so I don't have any problem with going ahead and approving the request. So motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item number 6, consideration with possible action on the request to declare the city properties located at 908 and 910 Velp Avenue as city surplus.
So this is the second part of that request, to declare it city surplus. We've notified affected departments and agencies. We really haven't heard much back from any of those entities, and we're recommending approval of the those two parcels going as surplus property, subject to not having access to Velp Avenue.
Okay, this-
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 7, consideration with possible action on the request of Alderman Randy Scannell to amend the mobile food establishment ordinance during Packer games to permit food trucks in residential areas. Referred by the Protection and Welfare Committee on August 4th, 2016. Recommendation is receive and place on file.
Move to receive it and place it on file.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you very much. You guys.
Yeah, and I would also like to welcome Jake.
Yes.
It was good luck.
Keep
6:48.
coming back.
Right?
Yeah, keep coming back. Jake, of course, is our new plan commissioner and was recommended by Heather when Heather stepped down. So welcome. We're glad to have
Thank
you.
you.
And his education and background feeds right into this planning commission.
It does.
Yes.
Yes.
But we have given him a rather misleading representation of how these meetings go.
It made it easy on me the first time.
So I take item number 1 from tonight's agenda and then duplicate that a few times.
Got it.
Maybe in the future, we'll let him make a motion.
Then we have director's update.
All right, so update on council actions from our marathon meeting, August 16th. Every item on the Plan Commission report was pulled, so we discussed them thoroughly. The conditional use permit for the TRP at 1059 Shadow, Plan Commission recommended, that ended up getting denied on a 6-6 vote. Mayor Pro Tem voted not in favor of it, so that permit, CUP, was denied. For the CUP for the 3 two-family dwellings on East Walnut, that's the Habitat project, the Twindos. Once we got past the concept of what they're actually proposing, that they're, really 6 individual homes or 6 individual households, that passed. To deny the rezoning request for 1022 9th Street. That was to deny, that got overturned, so now we'll be going through the process, and that will be up for, we had the first reading, so, the first reading will go next time.
Tuesday.
Yep, the first reading will go Tuesday, so now that'll start its process with the first hearing on Tuesday, and the third hearing and public hearing on the 4th of October, if it gets advanced. And then the conditional use permit that Plan Commission approved, that was for 1783 Main Street. That was the auto repair by Cops. Plan Commission recommended approval. That was voted down and denied by council. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we definitely had some good discussion on those items. And then just for internally administrative note, Cheryl Renyer-Wig has accepted a position as Assistant Director for the Department of Community and Economic Development. It's a new position that we created with the reorganization this past May, and Cheryl beat out a very competitive field of candidates, so I just wanted to welcome her to that position. With that, we need to fill the neighborhood development manager supervisor, so we'll be looking for that. And then we're also right now recruiting for a design specialist and real estate specialist that will kind of complete our department per the reorganization.
I had certain suspicions about that garage. Could you expand on why it was overridden?
The garage.
Somewhat,
Well,
yeah.
number-
Alderman from
number
that
4?
area had
Yeah,
a lot
all
of
over
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, the alderman brought forth some information at the meeting, and basically council felt that based on, I guess, operation in violation of the ordinance and the continuance of operating in violation of the ordinance, to the point that I think at planning staff, we had to get to a point of cease and desist for that they were not in favor of doing that.
Yeah, I understand that the person was operating that place exactly the way he wanted, and he kind of misled us at that meeting, so that's what I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the planning commission knew that.
Thank you. Which one was the 6-6 tie?
The number 1, the CUP for 1059 Shadow.
So it was denied or?
It was denied.
Denied.
6-6 tie. And then, yeah.
Well, and the 9th Street one was a 6-6 tie as well. That one was the next to the farmhouse. That one was approved. We
Correct.
sent it for denied, and it came back approved.
Which is really going to be ammunition for talking about the subjectivity of the decisions and how unpredictable they are.
Was there any information you could share with us why that was denied? The mayor even broke the tie. It's kind of interesting.
Which one, on the
Shadow.
on Shadow Lane?
Yeah.
I mean, I won't speak for the mayor. I think the thought was, discussion was that there was not a consistent policy, and this was kind of beyond where we had, Plan Commission had looked at some before, the neighbors, in terms of a large swath of people coming out against it.
Well, and I think we've talked too about where that whole perception that we ended, it was only Shadow Lane and we ended at Oneida Street.
Mm.
And that was something that council talked about too, was that, well, this is past Oneida Street and we only do it in that section. I'm still trying to figure out where that whole idea that we stop at Oneida came from.
That would have been a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right?
And that was never policy, it was always a part of
Just a
general
Thought
concerns with
process.
containing.
Just a
it,
guide.
yeah. When we thought we could contain it.
Back when we were naive.
Yeah, exactly. Innocent, naive.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Very good, Lisa.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.